Welcome back to Snipe Hunt, your frightening folklore podcast. I'm Gary Clevenstein.
And I'm Darren Young.
Today, we are giving you the second collection of encounters given to us by real people from real experiences.
Yeah, I originally called this emailed encounters, but I decided to change it to just regular encounters because, it's simpler.
I like it.
Less I have to type. But we got 3 stories for you guys today. 2 coming from our original submitter, Saucy Sweets.
Saucy.
Thank you very much for submitting your story again. And we have another one from user M. On the unexplainedmysteries.com website.
Nice.
Under True Ghost Stories.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
I like.
So let's go ahead and jump into it, shall we?
We shall.
This first one is from M on The Unexplained, and it is titled 3 Knocks, 3 Nights. A little over 2 years ago, my mom, son, and I moved into my brother's rental house. From the beginning, it always felt a little off to me. Like the cliched, I felt like I wasn't alone thing. It started off with me seeing black shadows out of the corner of my eyes when I'd walk by different rooms. Then it progressed to me waking up to a black shadowy figure that would come running towards me. And then in parentheses it says, since they don't come aggressively towards me, they just stand in my closet doorway, but if they do walk/move around, they just walk in front of my bed or walk to within a foot of me and stop.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I would be out. The creepiest part for me, though, was the knocking that started happening. It happened around 10 times, give or take. Never a specific day, just a specific time. It always seemed to happen around 11:30 p.m., and then again around 1:30ish a.m. when I was home. I mean, you wouldn't hear it if you weren't home, so...
Right.
Or around 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. when it was just my mom and son home. Oh, well, never mind. I take that back. It would knock 3 times. 3 loud, slow knocks. And it would do it 3 times. So a total of 9 knocks. Each set is 3, with about 1 or 2 seconds between each individual knock, and about 5 seconds or so between each set.
Why are they always knocking?
Yeah, I guess for if it was a spirit or something else, I think that would be one of the easier ways to communicate. And I'm guessing but we'll talk about it here in a second.
Right.
Some nights it would happen once, and other nights it would happen twice, and always in the same area of the house. The knocks were so loud and carried through the house so much that it would wake both my mom and son up, and they would come running from their rooms because it scared them that much. But the strangest part is that we own 3 dogs. 3 dogs that will bark at a leaf if it hits the ground too loudly, or if you hit the coffee table because they will mistake it for someone knocking on our door.
I know that all too well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, every single time these knocks happened, they didn't even hear them because they didn't bark or react in the slightest way. One of the dogs was right next to where the knocking came from, and he didn't even wake up. The dogs have also started to just stare at the ceiling. One stares in the hallway, one in the living room, and will stare for a while to the point of having to get up and clap in their face just to get their attention.
God, that drives me nuts.
And snap them back to reality. Whoa, back to reality. Whoa.
Yeah. My dog will do that. They'll just kind of just stare off, and then I'm like Chloe. And then they don't react, and I'm like, Chloe.
Chloe's so old
like,
though
is
now.
she dead? Like, what?
She's brain dead. Am I just imagining things and being overly paranoid? Or is it something/someone else?
Ooh.
Let's break this down a bit. So shadow people, for one thing. That's the one thing, actually, it starts with the feeling that it feels off. And then we get shadow people, and then we get these knockings that were so loud it wakes people up, and always from the same place. But it doesn't specify where the place was. Maybe it's down in the comments somewhere. But I would really like to know where the knocking is coming from specifically. Is it coming from a single room? Is it coming from,
Yeah, it's always just like you could just hear it. Like, you don't know exactly where.
Well, he said it always came from the same place, but then elaborate any further than that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's probably, I'm assuming it's probably in a hallway or something.
Right.
Because that's where, and, it's kind of hard, to be skeptical of this type of stuff because it's always knocking and shadow people. So it's like,
well, to play devil's advocate, let's look at the skeptical point of view. So at the very beginning of the story, he talks about seeing shadow people from the corner of his eye. Mm-hmm. So infrasound is sound that is below a certain hertz. It's a certain low frequency, too low for humans to hear, but it does cause reactions when it's being heard. It could be caused by like even something as low key as air conditioning. And so one of the sensations that it will cause a gray blob to appear in your peripheral vision. So that might explain.
Oh, so this is like a scientific standpoint?
This is a scientific thing.
Okay,
this is a legitimate thing. Infrasound is real. Actually, elephants use it to communicate. But in humans, it causes certain reactions even though we can't hear it.
Right.
Including one of them being a gray blob. So that might explain the shadow people he's been seeing out of peripherals.
So it's also kind of like staring at like a white screen for like
it's kind of like an illusion thing, except
like,
it's a sound that's affecting your vision. If that makes any sense, it's affecting your brain in such a way to see.
Like you notice when you're like laying in the dark, no sound at all. You can hear like,
oh yeah, you can hear like the blood flowing in your head.
Yeah, you just hear like it's like real dense sounding.
I could Google and tell you exactly how infrasound works, but I don't think that's necessary. Yeah. I'll explain that part now. As when you see the shadow people coming towards you. Let's see. Like seeing black shadow progress to me waking up. So he's waking up. So he could still be in a dreamlike state. Could be sleep paralysis. We talked about that before. Like I said, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. But the knocking is a little bit harder to explain. Could be animals, but it seems so manufactured. It has to be done by something intelligent, you would think.
Well, yeah, and it's timed perfectly.
Right. Yeah, time. Absolutely. Like it's timed perfectly to let you know that it's not just random knocking.
Right.
So it is trying to communicate in some way, whatever that way may be. And then
so is that the end of the?
That's the end of the story. There are some comments from some other people. I'll get to those just a second.
Oh, okay.
So another thing is when he said it would do it around a certain time, I was thinking, I'm not sure if we discussed this before, but there's the witching hour, which used to be from like midnight to 1 p.m., where supernatural activity is supposed to happen more. Like there's like the door to the spirit world.
It's almost that always open. At night. Always.
Yeah, it is always at night. Now the new witching hour, devil's hour, is around 3 p.m. to 5 or 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. But the thing about that is, it would do it multiple times. I'm saying 11:30, 1:30 a.m. when he was home, or 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. when it was just his mom and son. So it's interesting that it's changing the times of its activity based on who's home and who's not.
It's just wanting some attention.
Or at least that's what it seems like.
It's like, I'm bored.
Yeah. Someone do something. Yeah. I just got to sit here and watch you guys. You could at least be entertaining. But also that is super weird about the dogs, because you have yippy dogs.
Oh, God.
How they react to every little sound.
Yeah. A doorbell plays on a show. Holy crap.
Oh, yeah. They go crazy.
Holy crap.
And I know whenever I come over to your house, I'm greeted by a cavalcade of dogs and they're barking. Or yipping, I should say. Oh. See, that's why you need to get big dogs, Gary, because at least when they're barking, they at least sound scary and less annoying.
Accidentally leave the front door open.
Chloe wouldn't go anywhere, but the other dogs would.
She'd go lay on the porch.
She'd be like, this is great.
In the sun.
A new place to lay out on. So, to answer your question, Em, I don't think you're being overly paranoid. I think it definitely sounds like something. Something more than just your imagination, for sure. It's just too much going on at once to just dismiss it as not something paranormal.
But you can rest easily knowing that it's not out to hurt you.
Not yet. Yeah.
Not yet. Yeah. At least not yet.
I think he has other stories, but I mean, Em, if you're listening, I know I've been emailing you. You can provide some follow-up on this. That'd be great, like where it's coming from and if anything has happened, if any of the activities escalated or anything like that.
It'd be interesting for you to take a couple photos or video at night.
Oh, yeah.
Flash on, too.
Definitely take some EVPs. some electronic voice phenomena, maybe just start some recordings around your house, see if you pick up any voices or anything like that. But I would also advise, I mean, I'm no expert on this, but I would also advise not like using a Ouija board or anything, anything to invite anything else in.
Anything that'll open a portal from hell.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Like Ouija boards in general, I know they're just a game, but it's just the fact that you're just inviting something in. Yeah. I don't think it's the game itself. I think it's just the fact that you're, hey, we want to talk to you. I think that's just a dumb idea. So
if in fact that stuff does exist, we want to, throw caution to the wind and just not chance it.
Yeah.
Because the fact that we're reading this story, so something happens to you could possibly happen to us, and I just don't need that stress in my life right now.
It's true. I mean, some things, if they say if you talk about them, you're more likely to experience them.
Right.
So that's why we're not talking about the black-eyed kids, because they terrify me. They're super interesting.
After you told me about that, I listened to some about it. I think Dan talks about that a little bit.
Yeah, too. I think a little bit, but I'm not about it. I don't want anything to do with them. I don't want to hear knock at my door in the middle of the night.
Children are just creepy anyway.
It's true. I'm not a big fan of children and just regular children, let alone black-eyed children.
But anything to do with haunted children, possessed children,
or just something that's made itself to look like a child to open up some sort of vulnerability within you, that's a whole different thing. Now, if they were like black-eyed Girl Scouts, I'd be fine with that. Get some,
as long as they had the Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah, as long as they actually delivered. Because if they came up and you're just like, oh, we're totally selling cookies, let us into your house. See, that's what they need to do. Because black-eyed children, I know we're talking about them. I know we said we weren't.
Excuse me, sir. But would you like Thin Mints?
Yes, please. But so what they're trying to do is get into your house. And I think the best way to do that is to be like, we're Girl Scouts. We're selling cookies. Can we come in? I'm like, yeah, get in here.
Come on in.
And then we would die.
No, you put the, salt? Put a salt line at your door.
Yeah, there you go. But you'd almost have to put like a tube. That way it wouldn't like blow away.
Right.
But I don't know.
My luck, I'd open the door and
they just look down and be like, nice try. Yeah. I'm the Batman.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the comments from one of the many internet experts on there says, sounds like you have demonic activity. Knocking in threes is to mock the Holy Trinity. I don't know if you're spiritual or religious, ? But I consider myself a Bible believer and not a Christian per se. Okay. And if I rebuke something like that in the name of Jesus Christ, it always disappears and stops bothering me. They sure love to annoy us. So let's try not to laugh too hard at him. But he does sort of make a good reference with the three knocks and mocking the Holy Trinity.
That sounds.
But the only thing is, it's usually 3 sets of 3 knocks. I mean, I guess that's meant to mock the Trinity, but that's still 9 knocks total.
I know nothing about the Holy Trinity.
Well, it's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Oh.
And that's all you need to know about it. It's Jesus, God, and the Spirit. But. And then someone else said 3 knocks has nothing to do with religion, but different ethnic backgrounds. And he didn't elaborate further than that. I wish he did, but because that was a direct reply to the first guy. But whatever.
See what I think of when that person said that when they rebuke something like that in the name of Jesus Christ. To me, that's mental. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times, like you can.
Right,
you can convince yourself that something is not there, or you can convince yourself that something is there.
Yeah, I mean,
because your brain, like if you sit around it all day and think, oh God, I feel like crap, I'm so sick or I'm so tired, you're probably gonna get more tired, and so like something like this, you think, Jesus, come rid me of the demons or whatever,
right.
In your head. You are ridding.
Well, what it is, it's the placebo effect. If you think it's going to work, you might be able to trick your mind into thinking it's working or it actually working. That even the power of belief is so strong that placebo effect is you can trick your body. Like if they give you a sugar pill and say this sugar pill does this thing, even though it doesn't because it's just a sugar pill and you take it, but then you start seeing the effects of the thing that they said it was going to do. So in the same way, if you experience some sort of activity and then you say, in Jesus' name, get out of here, and then it stops, either one, it could be just a coincidence. Two, it could be really reacting to the name of Jesus Christ. Or three, you're just not noticing it now because in your mind, it's done and over with.
Well, like we rewind back to episode 4 or 5 when we did the crescent. We were talking about the guy who bought the hotel back in the day and had the cancer cure and all that. I'm sure a lot of them patients probably
at least felt better because they thought it was going to work, even though
he was
nothing.
Essentially give them distilled water,
even though it didn't do anything for their cancer.
Exactly.
But they probably reported that they did feel better because if they really believed,
and the treatments were working.
In the treatments. So that's it for the first one. Any closing thoughts on that story?
No, I would like a follow-up.
Yeah, a follow-up would be great. All right, so let's move on to either one of those other stories.
I don't know, man.
All right,
Saucy Sweets. You have encountered way more than I would care to.
It's true. I mean, part of me was like, I want to experience something because I'm so interested in this.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm like, no thanks. I'm good. I'd really rather not.
Well, this one is titled, I'll Get You, My Pretty. All right. This night, my husband and I had fallen asleep with the TV on. I don't know why I woke out of a dead sleep, but I did. I remember opening my eyes slowly to adjust to the dark and then the light of the TV. I also noticed I was laying on my back in bed and the covers were half draped on me. Then I was struck by this feeling of something not quite right in the room, and an icy chill moved through my veins, and for some reason I moved my eyes towards the corner of the room. At first, I noticed how dark the corner was, even with the light from the apartments outside that shined through our window, and it was as if the light was being absorbed by the darkness of the corner. It was that black. Then as I blinked again to see if maybe the combination of just being groggy from being woken up, the way the lights were angled, or maybe it was me just being silly and things were just playing tricks on me, but something wasn't right about the corner. No matter how I looked at it, it wasn't me. The darkness began to move forward towards me, taking on a shape of a woman in a long, black, tattered, hooded robe. There's a difference between shadow people and then something actually taking form and being able to come up with detail like that. Yeah,
and usually shadow people is just like described more of a solid silhouette. Yeah. This is actually like a robe.
Yeah.
So this is already super weird so far, but keep going.
I began to panic, thinking someone broke into our home, and as I went to reach over for my husband, who was asleep beside me, I found that I couldn't move at all. I was paralyzed, and my heart began to race faster, as I had never in all my 26 years have I ever had this happen before. I went to shout at my husband, "Honey, someone is in our room," but nothing came out. I was staring at this woman who now became more and more clearer. I can only describe her as what many call a witch hag-like figure. She had a pale face with a wide smile, and her eyes seemed dark and sunken in. She just kept staring at me, and in those few seconds, all I could think of is how do I alert my husband? Then all of a sudden, in one fluid motion, this woman leaped up from her standing position that was quite far from our bed and proceeded to land right on top of my chest. I was terrified that this could be the last time I'd ever see my husband or family again, and in that second, as if I had been sleeping forever, I just seemed to wake up with a gasp straight up in bed. I immediately looked towards the corner of the room. So it just jumped inside of her. That's what happened.
Oh,
it was
God.
like, yeah.
That's an awful...
Saucy Sweets is now possessed.
That explains a lot. Just kidding, Saucy Sweets.
Nothing was there. The TV show had ended that was on, and my husband still fast asleep. I laid back down, unable to go back to sleep, and tried hard to think about what I had gone through, and after some time, I did go back to sleep. The next morning, my husband and I were talking, and I had just told him about what had happened to me, how weird the dream was. I explained that it didn't feel like a dream, but it must have been. Then I began to describe the witch hag that I saw, and suddenly, my husband's face drained of color, and he just stared at me. I stopped my story short, as I was now concerned that maybe I upset him. "Honey, what's wrong? Are you okay?" He stared at me and just said, "The next time you see that thing, you have to touch me. Somehow, you have to touch me, or get my attention." I honestly thought he was joking. This is a guy who tries to debunk anything paranormal. I was sure he would say this was a dream I had, but now he was just acting strange. He later told me why he said this and acted this way, and it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. But that is for his story to share in another time.
Oh.
No! I want it now!
I know. You can't build up all this,
What the crap?
his reaction, and then not follow through with it. But, like, I do appreciate that it's his story to tell,
Yeah.
not hers. But still.
I mean, I can understand if it was like his, something to do with his colon.
It's obviously something that really upsets him.
Right.
So,
As for what I went through, I have never in my life ever had sleep paralysis before. And if this is what that was, I've never had it since then, and it's been many years after this event. Also, if this was a dream, it was a very vivid dream, and I can still remember everything. I honestly have no clue what this was, but it was extremely disturbing.
So I'm just going to go ahead and say here that this is definitely sleep paralysis, but the whole thing with the hag is very interesting because this is pretty prevalent in folklore. Usually, a lot of people who experience sleep paralysis will describe seeing a hag-like being sitting on their chest. There's actually a Wikipedia article for the night hag. It's called the night hag, or old hag, is the name given to a supernatural creature used to explain the phenomenon of sleep paralysis. It is a phenomenon during which a person feels the presence of a supernatural, malevolent being, which immobilizes the person as if sitting on his/her chest or at the foot of his/her bed. The word nightmare is used to describe this phenomenon before it's acquired its modern, more general meaning. Various cultures have various names for this phenomenon and or supernatural character. What I find interesting is that across a ton of cultures, they're all experiencing not only sleep paralysis, but seeing this one particular figure. There's definitely a scientific explanation for sleep paralysis itself and hallucinating, but why are everyone seeing this night hag sitting on your chest?
I was reading the comments.
Oh God!
This one person,
Don't read the comments.
I think you just watched The Wizard of Oz before you went to the bed. You went to bed. Oh man! Unless Cartoon Network was playing Wizard of Oz that night, which it wasn't.
So yeah, I just think it's interesting that everybody is experiencing the same figure across various cultures, because usually when you hallucinate something, the hallucination is usually determined by what you've experienced in your life and the culture which you grew up in. Whereas this, everyone who experienced sleep paralysis is all seeing this hag. So maybe it is something more than just.
Well, have you
a
ever been laying in
hallucination.
bed in the dark and you're like, if your bed's like facing a doorway and you've got a hallway, I can almost guarantee anybody has seen a shadowy figure in the hallway.
Oh no, for sure. But the thing is, this is a super specific
this thing
figure
that jumps on you and then you can't
on your
move.
chest and is a hag. It's not just a shadowy person or like a person itself. And so it's usually considered the work of demons. A lot of people who've been visited by demons describe this, usually like succubi and incubi, because they're the ones that come in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that's what this one comment says. Says, why has no one said that this is a succubus?
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm sure each culture has a different interpretation of the figure, but they all seem to be seeing the same thing, which is interesting. It's sort of an archetypal figure that everyone experiences, but I don't know why everyone would experience the same thing.
Well, it just makes me wonder, like, because I'm curious on all standpoints, from the paranormal standpoint to the scientific standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, because it's always usually when you're asleep. Like, have you ever been resting and you fall asleep, but you don't know that you've fallen asleep really?
Yeah.
And like you fall. You ever done that? Like you fall, and all of a sudden
and you're dreaming, and then you jerk away.
Jerk, yeah. You're like, because you think you've fallen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I'm wondering if like there may be like something that happens to people when they're sleeping. Because I've never really had sleep paralysis, but I have woken up and then won't move. I want to move, but I'm like, I don't want to move. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I think that's
I'm
just
telling
you
myself
waking
to
up.
move,
Right.
but then I don't. You know, it's almost like it feels like you can't. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's almost like your mind and your motor function, they're not connecting.
Well, I think
short circuiting almost.
Well, we've talked about this in the Gen episode, but basically when you go into REM sleep, which is your deep sleep where you get all your dreams from, your brain literally paralyzes your body so that way you won't move in your dream. So when you wake up in the middle of this REM sleep mode, sometimes your brain doesn't tell your body that you're awake. So that's when you wake up and the dream part of your brain's still going. So that's why you experience these hallucinations, and that's why you can't
and
move.
That's probably what's malfunctioning when people like sleepwalkers.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what's happening. So, like I said, this definitely does have a scientific explanation for at least the phenomenon, but it doesn't really explain why everybody's experiencing the same
shadow,
thing.
The hack.
Very, very interesting. All right, so let's move on to another story, also by Saucy Sweets, who is the single-handedly keeping this series going so far. But it looks like User M has other stories that he's willing to use, so we'll get to those in later Encounters episode. So this next one by Saucy Sweets is titled, Only the Darkness Knows. If you are following my encounters, you already have a good idea that weird things have happened to me or to those I hold dear to my heart. This encounter is no different. As in previous stories, I have said that I have lived on an island in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and yes, this is still where it took place, but when I was 3. I want this known. I hated my parents' bedroom. Something always seemed off about it. It was eerie, and when the lights were off, it didn't help that feeling, especially when they left the door open. I don't know why I always felt something was watching me as I walked out of my room and down the hall toward the living room, but I did. Now at the time our house was set up, if you walked in the front door, you would walk into the living room, and if you go through the living room, you'd find a hallway to your left that led to the bedrooms, bathrooms, and laundry room. So one night, an hour before I had to go to bed, I decided to stop playing in my bedroom and risk it all and head down the hall to the living room where my mother and father were. They were watching TV and I could hear it clearly from the doorway. I took a deep breath and peered out the door, praying that this time maybe my parents' door would be shut. But nope. The woman, aka my loving mother, left the door wide open and the pitch black room stared at me. The sinking feeling of, I see you, moved over me like icy chills. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, I was scared, and yes, my undies were still dry. I, being brave at 3, decided like all the times before, running was a good plan. I stepped out and no sooner I decided to run for it. I felt something behind me grab my waist and yank me down, which made me hit my knees hard on the floor and in the same motion try and pull me back towards my parents' room. Okay, so this is some straight up horror movie.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna probably have nightmares tonight.
You ever do that though? Like you go to
what,
like,
get
go
pulled,
in bed,
drugged by a supernatural force in my parents'
not that
room?
much, but I mean like you like feel like something's watching you.
Oh yeah,
so
all
you
the
flick
time.
the light off and run.
Yeah, especially no.
I still do that.
In my parents' house, I would do that. I would have to run up the stairs and be like, come on. Terrifying feeling. Anyway, whatever was doing this wasn't going to stop as I crept little by little toward the living room. I still couldn't yell or scream. Boy, I did try, but nothing came out. I was now thinking that if I stopped, whatever has me was going to pull me back and eat me. I had to keep going, and I saw where the edge of the carpet in the living room met the floor, and with all my strength lunged for the carpet. As my small fingers and hands hit the carpet, the feeling of being dragged away, and everything instantly stopped. I could breathe again. I quickly stood and ran to my parents, crying about what happened to me. My mother and father believed that I had gone through something, but I was also a child, and so they just soothed me. Said I was sleepwalking and just tripped. Side note, the moment from the time I left the room into the hall it seemed like forever, but in fact it was only 5 minutes. I know this because I remember the news was still on and hadn't ended. I know this happened and I know something in this home or land we were on and I can't explain it other than weird.
I think your parents just picked really weird places to live.
Yeah, could be.
I blame your mother.
Could very well be. So I think it is pretty interesting that you remember something from when you were 3. It is actually similar to a dream I remember when I was around 4 or 5, which I explained in my Phantom Black Dogs minisode, if you guys want to listen to that. So I know it's definitely possible because I remembered from that early on.
Well, there's certain things that'll just stick in your mind.
Yeah, they'll definitely stick with you. An event like this will definitely stick with you. Now, there's not much to go on to try to provide an explanation. I mean, it could very well be that you were just scared of that something fell off in that room and you were just terrified of that room. And as a child, your imagination got the best of you. Maybe you did trip and fall, and that scared you to the point that you thought something was grabbing you. Or maybe some invisible force was grabbing you and trying to drag you into the room. If this was the case, I'm curious as to what its plan was. What was going to happen when it got you into the room? You know? Because you don't ever necessarily hear stories.
Well, you see it all in movies all the time.
Yeah, in movies.
And they normally just drag you into a room, close a door. I think it's just a scare tactic.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they really do anything to you after that point. Just kind of like...
Yeah, and there's
mess
no
with you.
real life basis for what would happen if you got caught in the room with you. Like, they talk about this on Astonishing Legends podcast all the time, how there are these, I mentioned this before, where these unspoken supernatural rules. That's why you never hear about like a ghost killing someone, no matter how malevolent it is, because maybe there's some sort of supernatural binding rules that doesn't allow them to.
Right.
So
just become toys.
Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's just something trying to scare you, and you being a little child being an easy target.
Anytime I think of it being dragged, though, like it makes my fingernails hurt. Because most of the time
you're imagining gripping the floor.
Yeah, gripping the floor. Like if it's a wood floor and your fingernail, like
oh yeah.
That's like, to me, when reading this, that's what I was thinking of. Like I wasn't so much the ghost, something
you just
dragging
felt
me.
uncomfortable.
I felt uncomfortable because the feeling of nails on the ground and the fingernails and stuff getting up underneath it. Like, oh God.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Oh. Whew.
Well, all right. That was, if anything else, it was definitely a scary story.
I don't know, Saucy, you are...
Yeah, I do not envy you and your sensitivity to seemingly paranormal encounters.
I appreciate all of your stories.
Although your stories are very entertaining, and we really appreciate you giving us permission to use them.
Yeah, but I have no interest in being around you whatsoever. No offense.
No offense. But that will wrap up this episode of Encounters. If you have a story, please do not hesitate to send us the story itself, a link to the story, or even record it and send it to us.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't matter what it's about either. Yeah. I mean, as long as it's entertaining and touches somewhere on folklore,
Yeah, I mean, if it's anything paranormal, supernatural, maybe you saw Bigfoot one day.
Yep.
Send it to us. We'll more than happy to.
I would love it if we would especially love it if you've encountered an intergalactic Sasquatch.
Oh yeah, or interdimensional, or both.
Yeah, whatever.
Sasquatch alien, perhaps.
Yes.
Either way, we'll take your story, but
that will go to the top of the queue.
Yes, absolutely. So if you are interested, you can email us at snipehuntpodcast@gmail.com. You can also get a hold of us on Facebook and Twitter. Please rate the show on whatever platform you listen to it on. That really helps grow the show. And thanks for listening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to Ethan Rothfuss. Is it Rothfuss?
It is Rothfuss.
Rothfuss, okay. Thank you for filling these giant shoes for the Christmas episode. You did a great job.
Yes, and also thank you for designing the logo. But I'm sure everybody listening already knew that.
We're giving you a sticker.
We are giving you a sticker. You deserve it.
Yes, since you made it at all. Once again, we want to thank you for listening to Snipe Hunt. Your listening has been noted and will be reported with the proper authorities. All audio used was done so under the protection of fair use.
Logo design is by Ethan Rothfuss. The music used for this episode was composed by Mayu and Nature World 1986. You'll continue to search for the unexplained and will hopefully see you on the next hunt.